Good morning. This is Mark Bowd of Real Estate Economics. It is July 27th, and our topic this morning for today's webinar is the impact of green technology on residential development decisions. I have been increasingly involved in renewable energy and green technology research. As many of you know, I think it is going to be one of the main drivers in this upcoming economic cycle. And I wanted to share with you some of the research that we've done, some of the ideas that have come forth from that research regarding this new technology and what I think the impact is on the overall housing market recovery. I wanted to share with you first a little bit about what's gone on in California and what is going on even as we speak. We think that there will be a dramatic increase in energy costs in California. That has already been manifest in several areas of California, especially in Los Angeles County. On April 12th of this year, Governor Jerry Brown signed Senate Bill 2X, which mandates that 33% of California's energy must be generated by renewable sources by year 2020. Now, before that, we had a mandate that 20% of our energy must be generated by renewable sources in that time frame. It is remarkable to me that during one of the worst recessions that we have ever faced in our lifetimes, we have actually upped the ante in terms of increasing the speed in which we adopt this new technology. It is a risk that California is taking. At the same time, there's a chance that that bet may pay off. Without accounting for inflation, AB 32 legislation will increase energy rates by 34% in Southern California, those areas covered by Southern California Edison, 44% by PG&E. They cover a lot of northern and central California, and by 74% in Los Angeles County. These are estimates that actually preceded the signing of SB 2X, and they really don't account for inflation. So we're going to see some dramatic changes based upon the legislation that we've already passed. Just as a brief review, AB 32 is legislation that was passed back in 2006 that requires, at least it initially required, that 20% of our energy usage be from renewable sources by the year 2020. We have already adopted a framework for that legislation. It begins in earnest in year 2012, with penalties increasing dramatically during years 2015 through 2020. California's energy costs are already about 40% higher than energy in states without this mandate, and so it is increasingly challenging to do business successfully in California because of energy costs. And so the more we're able to adopt technology that reduces the impact of those increases, the better off we'll be and the more competitive we will be. And that's really kind of the bet that we're making in the state of California right now. Here is a technology adoption curve, just kind of a generic one that sets forth the time frame for AB 32. We feel strongly that industry leaders need to take advantage of incentives associated with early adoption of this technology. If they don't, they suffer the penalties associated with early or late majority adopters. And what I mean by this early adoption is really these first couple of years of implementation of AB 32, which technically is year 2012, 2013. It started earlier than that for many, but those are really the core years where AB 32 really kicks in. There are a large amount of incentives, both on a state and a federal level. And those incentives are meant to get as many entities, both companies and households, to adopt this technology as soon as possible in order to lay the foundation for a successful implementation of AB 32. If they don't, then penalties are increasingly set forth. And most of those penalties are slated for years 2015 and beyond. But there are some penalties that begin associated with the cap and trade system that begins for the largest industries in California as early as 2012. Now, regarding these tax incentives that are out there already, and some of them are actually increasing, there is a tax benefit associated with 179D. This legislation allows for up to $1.80 per square foot tax deduction for energy efficiency that's implemented in new construction, or that is implemented in a retrofit. There's a chance that that will be replaced by legislation that calls for $2.25 per square foot tax credit for energy efficiency. That's pending. It may not actually come out to be a credit. It may actually fall to another deduction. But my point is that benefit is actually improving. We think that that will actually kick in by about 2012. It's a big deal for somebody who has a 10,000 square foot building that generates a fairly substantial tax deduction, and an increasing number of non-residential entities will seek to take advantage of that in the implementation of this new technology. Other legislation, this is mostly directed toward the residential side and mostly toward multifamily, is the 45L Energy Efficient Home Credit. This is a credit as opposed to a tax deduction, $2,000 per unit if the units qualify and are certified for energy efficiency. The great thing about this is that California building codes already force the qualification of new construction for this particular tax credit. So if you have built anything since, say, 2007, you will qualify for this tax credit if you built up to California code. There are so many entities that have not taken advantage of this tax credit that Real Estate Economics has actually teamed with our affiliate ZeroNet Energy Solutions to provide a tax service to go investigate the qualification for this particular credit for those residential developers who have built apartments, multifamily homes, and even single-family homes that would qualify for this deduction but haven't taken it. There's also a 30% federal tax credit or grant for renewable energy production. And so if you are implementing solar on your rooftops or wind turbine technology or fuel cell technology, the government will basically pay about 30% of that bill for the implementation of that technology. There's accelerated depreciation benefits. For affordable housing, there is an incredible incentive of $3.30 per watt tax credit. Keep in mind that it only costs between maybe $4 to $5 per watt for the installation, and so the vast bulk of that cost is absorbed in this tax credit for affordable housing. There's also numerous state and federal and local rebates and incentives that can be implemented on various jobs, as well as various utility company rebates. There's also enhanced real estate values associated with green technology, and I wanted to share with you some research that is provided to us by Nevin and Watson, a report that was done on a national basis a few years ago. I think it's a bit outdated, but I also think that this relationship has actually strengthened over time. So what this shows is the overall relationship between the reduction of energy costs relative to the value of real estate. And it's mainly, at least this particular chart is mainly directed toward the commercial entities. So for example, if you have a $20,000 per year energy cost, which is about what our bill is on our 10,000 square foot building here on Research Drive, if you're able to reduce that to zero through technology, through the implementation of solar roofing and high efficiency HVAC technology, LED lighting, and so on, and that's certainly not an impossibility with today's technology. If you're able to rid yourself of that particular energy cost, the overall value of your real estate, the corresponding increase in the value of that real estate, should increase by about $404,000. And that makes sense. A lot of people don't realize, though, that there is a dramatic increase in the value of real estate as you reduce the energy cost. So, green technology manufacturing is already becoming a major driver in the new economic cycle. We're already experiencing the benefits of that, and I want to share with you some of the technology that has been implemented and is in the process of being implemented. on a general level for the entire United States. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago where the job report most recently was not very good. The overall number was very weak in terms of job growth, and the reason it was so weak is because of this enormous loss in government jobs. In the long term, I'm not sure that's necessarily a bad thing. Almost every other industry was positive, and I wanted to especially focus on manufacturing. The fact that manufacturing generated 173,000 jobs during the past 12 months is really incredible. And I know it's not nearly as high as it was for trade, as it was for professional and business services, or education and health services, or even leisure and hospitality. But the fact that it's even positive is a big deal, and we should recognize why it is positive. There are three main elements associated with manufacturing which are really contributing to this positive economic growth in this particular industry. One is high tech. We're doing a lot of exports. The computer industry is actually doing quite well, both in terms of software and hardware. Another is biotech. With a maturing population, that particular sector of manufacturing will continue to grow. And the new and most vibrant in a lot of ways is green technology. We've seen a lot of jobs being created in green technology, and we think that that continues for the next several years and becomes stronger and stronger over time. This is a new trend, however. I should state that this is where we were a year ago, where manufacturing was a pretty severe negative. And then 2 years ago, it was an incredibly severe negative. It was the largest loser in terms of jobs that we had in the economy 2 years ago. Even in the peak period between 2003, 2004, 2005, those were the strong growth years, especially 2004, 2005. This is an example from May 2004, several years ago. Even during that peak period of job growth in the United States, we were experiencing losses in manufacturing throughout that growth period. And so it's really only a recent phenomenon that we've begun to see job growth in the manufacturing sector, and it is being enhanced tremendously by this green technology and energy efficiency, renewable energy. So this green technology is divided in a few different segments. I wanted to talk about three of them. One is energy production. What I mean by that is anything that is actually generating electricity or energy. For example, photovoltaic roofing in the residential sector, something that produces energy at the site of consumption. Another is off-grid battery run housing. That is a popular topic. It's not necessarily as functional because it's actually more beneficial for a home to actually generate electricity and feed it back to the grid. If it generates more electricity than it needs to have the chance to actually feed that back to the grid. But more and more off-grid housing is being talked about. There's also parabolic and photovoltaic farms that are being implemented. We have a large farm in Kern County, another couple that are slated in the Inland Empire or under construction in the Inland Empire. Solar electric vehicles. This is a big deal. Many of you are familiar with the technology of solar roofing on the Prius, and I think that becomes more and more common over time. Electric vehicles. There are big arguments as to whether this is really as environmentally friendly as it sounds, but the fact is that at least in today's world, it costs much less to use an electric vehicle or a hybrid in today's world than it does a fossil fuel engine. To give you an example, the average cost of running a fossil fuel engine in a typical automobile is about 40 cents a mile once you account for not only the fuel costs but the maintenance costs. An electric vehicle or even a hybrid has reduced maintenance costs associated with it and far reduced costs associated with the fuel or the electricity. And it runs, the Chevy Volt runs about 4 cents per mile right now. With that dramatic a discrepancy in terms of the cost of operation, it's only a matter of time before the cost of actually purchasing the vehicle hits a point where it makes economic sense for most households to make that transfer from fossil fuel to either hybrid or electric. We are seeing the benefit of that transfer in the automobile industry right now. I mean, just to have the industry basically be in bankruptcy only a couple of years ago, and to really blossom out of that and show pretty strong economic growth during the past year is pretty amazing. We think that that growth continues in the automobile industry as an increasing share of the population converts to this new technology. It's far overdue, and thankfully the automobile industry was finally forced to the point where it had to adopt this new technology. We think that trend continues. Building-based wind turbines. This is kind of a new technology that isn't fully implemented, brand new, but very, very interesting. We've seen it implemented in places in Chicago and also in Hawaii, where a small wind turbine is built on the side of a building that generates electricity, given the breezes that are fairly constant in many areas of the nation. There's also technology associated with energy reduction, and in fact this is really the more important side in terms of its economic benefit to society. Though the production side is very important and essential, it's the energy reduction side that has a tremendous multiplier associated with it in terms of creating jobs and pumping money into the economy. And this is really the main portion of that. Is a lot of that has to do with LED lighting and the implementation of much lower cost to operate bulbs in buildings, in both commercial and residential buildings, as opposed to incandescent lighting. We think that the implementation of this new technology is already well underway. We've only implemented only a fraction of this technology, however, in residential and non-residential buildings, and that really becomes its own smaller economic driver as that transfer takes place to that technology. HVAC is a bigger deal. Right now in the United States, most of our HVAC systems are highly inefficient. I mean, it is the largest energy user in most commercial buildings and even residential buildings. There is new technology out there that's been out there for years and years that's been adopted by most of the world except for the United States, and it's called variable refrigerant flow technology. It's a technology that does not use ducts. It's far less costly to implement, but the actual equipment, the upfront costs are a bit more. It also allows for more precise zoned control of temperatures, and so it's much more efficient in that way as well, where it'll heat a hot room that has window frontage, while it will cool a hot room that has more window frontage, while it heats those interior rooms. Even at the same time you can do that. They tend to be a little bit cooler naturally. I won't go into the technology, but I will show the implementation of this technology throughout the world. For example, in Japan, about 90% of all systems in Japan are associated with this VRF, highly efficient technology that uses less than half the electricity that our systems here in the United States use. China, about 86% of all systems are VRF systems, and Europe, about 81% of all HVAC systems are associated with this VRF technology, as opposed to a typical unitary technology that we use in the United States. And here we are in the United States. We have 3% of this technology that's really been implemented thus far. There is an enormous market that is building for this particular technology and is being caused, strangely enough, by the increase in cost of electricity. As costs go up, this technology becomes more favorable to implement, and we'll see again a transfer, just like we're seeing in the automobile industry, just like we're seeing in lighting. We'll see a transfer from older systems to this new technology as it becomes far more energy efficient and cost efficient than the systems that we're now implementing in the United States. So all of these really mean a huge amount of jobs and economic drivers for the United States. And so as we adopt this technology and drive it forward in California, where our laws really promote this type of implementation, we think that there's a chance that California may actually experience most of the benefit, at least initially regarding this new technology, and unwind some of the troubles that we're facing right now regarding government debt and so on. There's a third element associated with energy efficiency. We've talked about energy production, energy reduction, and now there's energy optimization. There are systems out there that are meant for that optimization. The first one is smart meter technology. Smart meters are being introduced throughout California at a fairly rapid rate. It's not necessarily because it reduces your overall cost. In fact, I think it's a way for the electricity companies to more effectively bill you for the energy that you use. But what it will do is it will force you to examine the patterns of usage of electricity and be more efficient in terms of those patterns. So there are other tools that allow the analysis of electricity usage and waste, and allow also for the more efficient usage of that electricity. There's improvements in power quality that is going on, and there are improvements in power management. These are things that are being implemented by our associates at Zero Net Energy Solutions at various companies, and the technology is real. So the threefold drivers in terms of energy, renewable energy, and alternative energy are energy production, energy reduction, and energy optimization. And our friends at ZNE are very effective in implementing all of those at various companies. There's also long-term visions associated with energy technology, and I just wanted to touch on this because there are things going on, especially in California, that are pretty dramatic. Up in Northern California at Lawrence Livermore Lab, there is a project that began in the year 2001. A lot of money is being poured into this, and it's associated with fusion technology. And the overall in layman's terms, the theory behind this is that there is a small nickel-sized hydrogen wafer with the most powerful lasers in the world focused on that laser. And the idea is to focused on that wafer, and the idea is to ignite that wafer and create a small mini sun. If any of you have seen Spider-Man 2, that's kind of the technology that we're talking about. It is no longer science fiction. They've actually ignited it. It's just not quite in a state that it can be controlled and the electricity or the energy from that funneled effectively. But it's held together by magnetic waves. And as that technology is more effectively implemented and explored, and we're able to tap into that, it just produces an enormous amount of energy. To give you an idea of what 500 trillion watts of peak power is, that's more electricity than all of the power plants in the United States combined generate today. This is generated by one power plant associated with fusion technology, if this works. There are plans to, it's clean, it's more safe than nuclear technology, and theoretically we should, there are plans to implement the first fusion power plant in California by 2030. I don't know if that happens. I'm not sure it's because of the technology. I think the technology is rapidly there to create this type of energy. The problem is our grid. If you were to hook something like this up to our grid now, it would probably explode the California grid because it is very old and outdated, and it wouldn't be able to effectively handle this type of electricity. But it is something that's slated in the longer term. To me, we're definitely entering into what I call the energy age, and we've gone through ages throughout time that are described by various economic drivers, be it agriculture or industry or the computer age or information age. This new age, I think, is the renewable energy or green technology age, and I think it is becoming the major driver in the new cycle. It may not be for this particular cycle that we go through for the next 10 years, but I do think that it becomes an increasing force during the next couple of cycles, especially in California, where this type of technology is, for better or worse, it is being forced upon us. I think the faster we're able to implement it and take advantages of the benefits associated from it, the better our economy is going to do. So that is it for today's webinar. For those of you who are interested in our consulting services or our web-based information services, here is our contact information. For consulting, feel free to contact myself or my associate John Mulville. For sales, for web-based information tools, please feel free to contact Judy Duell or Sandy Rivera. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you'll join us in a couple weeks for our next webinar. Take care.